Sophie Kerr was a novelist and a writer. She was the author of 23 novels, 500 short stories. She was an editor and writer of a Broadway play that was made into a film. She's a woman who grew up on the Eastern Shore in Denton and who moved to New York to work on magazines and to work as a writer. She made her fortune in writing, and she, upon her death, after having visited Washington College, she received an honorary degree on the same day that Eleanor Roosevelt did. She left her fortune to the college and created an endowment and a prize.
The prize is to be awarded to a senior who shows the promise of literary merit. And it's up to the English department, along with the president, who's part of the Sophie Kerr committee, to decide what literary merit is.
Annually, the prize varies between $60,000 and $70,000.
It's a shocking amount of money. And people are interested and fascinated by the idea of giving such a young person such a large prize.
My name is Paige Keeby. I am a senior majoring in biology with a minor in chemistry and creative writing. My passion is medicine, so I'm looking forward to working as a physician later on in life, and I think my writing really kind of informs my ability to talk with others and communicate. And I also think that my passion for and curiosity of medicine kind of informs my writing.
We've had biology majors, we've had Spanish majors, we've had math majors.
Journalism, anthropological pieces, scholarly prose, of course things like poetry, fiction, and creative nonfiction as well. You know, I think the committee is always looking for the surprising student, the student that makes the group go, oh, you know, why haven't we ever seen this student before? So the prize winners and finalists have come from across campus, and that's, I think, one of the wonderful things about the liberal arts is that you don't have to specialize in one discipline here at Washington College to become a skilled writer and a skilled communicator.
I've learned so much in these past 4 years about writing. You know, I think probably when I was younger, I didn't know there was like, you know, form that you could use or, you know, things you could actually learn about writing. I always just kind of thought it came from within, but there really is like an art to it. And there's a lot to learn about it. So I think this journey has been a way for me to kind of reflect on my writing history and see how far I've come, but also see how you know, more confident and comfortable I am with my writing and with myself.
When Sophie gave her gift to the college, she specified two things. One was that half would go to this prize, and it's a really splashy prize. It's so large. I don't think anyone ever imagined it would be so large, the amount of this prize, so it gets a lot of attention. So the other half that goes to the English department is used to pay for speakers, is used to pay for student scholarships. There are 3 entering students every year are given Sophie Kerr scholarships. It pays for library books. It provides an array of opportunities for students. The speaking series is particularly robust.
Toni Morrison came to campus. She gave a phenomenal reading, and the next day she was in the literary house sitting down with about 10 students and talking about their work, and she spent about 2 hours doing that. I don't think those students will ever forget it, and if I had been a student, I think sitting there in that group with somebody of the stature of Toni Morrison would have made my undergraduate career.
So all together, I would say that the gift, the endowment, the things that the endowment is actually able to do for students, and the prize set the college apart. We have a very robust creative writing program as a result of this, and the opportunities we're able to provide for students set us apart. And it's part of why the college, it's not the only thing, but it's part of why the college considers itself a writing school. We teach writing here, and it's something that we value as important in the liberal arts tradition.
My name is Rachel Brown.
My name is Reilly Cox.
I'm Nick Anstead.
Grace O'Connor.
My name is Alexandria Smythe.
I'm really interested in balancing the creative with the academic and anthropological.
I'm first and foremost a poet. My writing is a means of having claim over my life.
What interests me as a writer is the musicality of language.
I like to just write instances that I've experienced in my life and fictionalize them.
I'm primarily a prose writer, so I do fiction and nonfiction, but I also do screenplay.
I would have lunch with Virginia Woolf, talk about my interpretation of her work and how she sees that lining up with her intention.
I would go for a walk on the moors with Emily Bronte.
Jose Maria Arguedas, he combines everything that I'm interested in.
A picnic by a river with Walt Whitman, fries with Roy Kesey down at JR's.
Douglas Adams and the restaurant at the end of the universe, because it just writes itself right there.
Greetings and welcome. I'm so very pleased. This is my very first Sophie Kerr Prize event, and I am excited about it very much. Let me first say congratulations to our 5 finalists. Excellent, excellent work. For someone who once dreamed of becoming a novelist, as I did, and a poet as well, we'll see how that turned out, though I did write picture books for children. The Sophie Kerr Prize strikes a tender chord with me. What a wonderful gift it is to have the financial freedom to pursue a writing career, because it is not, it's a tough way to make a living. I found that early in my career, but a noble cause. And I have great admiration for Sophie Kerr herself, a strong and independent woman who lived life on her own terms and who wanted to be remembered not only as a successful writer, but as a patron of the arts, as she was, and her legacy lives on at this school. For nearly 50 years, her legacy has lived on in this special place where young writers find their voice with the support and encouragement of our fine faculty. And in that regard, please help me give a warm welcome to one of our most outstanding faculty members, Kate Moncrief, who chairs the English Department and the Sophie Kerr Committee. Kate, thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. Hi, everyone. Welcome. So nice to see everyone here to help us celebrate this amazing occasion. My name is Kate Moncrief. I chair the English Department and the Sophie Kerr Committee. This is the 49th time we are going to award the Sophie Kerr Prize, and I'm really delighted to be able to honor her and for all of you to be here to support and to cheer on our finalists. I'd like to acknowledge the faculty members in the English department who served as members of the Sophie Kerr Prize Selection Committee, and to bid a special welcome to some former Sophie Kerr Prize winners who are in the audience today. We have on stage with us 5 incredibly talented young writers. In a few minutes, we'll listen to them read from their work. But I want to acknowledge all of the students who submitted their writing for consideration for the prize. This was an extraordinarily good year, which made the work of the committee a pleasure, a privilege, and a particular challenge. The students who submitted had majors or minors in English and creative writing, surprise, but also anthropology, art, business, dance, economics, German, Hispanic studies, humanities, philosophy, political science, secondary education, and theater. Every portfolio showcased accomplishment in writing, whether it was a finely crafted poem, a surprising lyrical essay, a beautiful paragraph in a short story, an original play, or a meticulously researched academic essay. These students are a true representation of the liberal arts experience, as well as a testament to the fact that Washington College is a writing school, a place across the curriculum where we value and cultivate the ability to think critically and communicate clearly, where we appreciate the desire to tell our stories and the stories of others, and where students who love to read and write find a community and a welcoming home. I also want to tell you a little bit about Sophie Kerr. She was born in 1880 on the eastern shore of Maryland, and she earned both a bachelor's degree and a master's degree at a time when neither were common for women. Over the course of her 40-year career, she served as managing editor of Women's Home Companion. She published 23 novels, 500 short stories, numerous articles in the most popular magazines of her day. She wrote a play and saw it run on Broadway and be turned into a Hollywood film, run right out to Netflix and look for 1934's Big-Hearted Herbert. Yes. She was a voracious reader and an industrious writer who took on as her subject matter everything from love and romance to cookery and cats. Although 3 of her novels are set on the Eastern Shore, most take place in New York City with a heroine who travels there from a small town to seek her fortune, as Kerr herself did, in moving from Denton to Pittsburgh to New York. She was a successful independent woman who supported herself with her earnings, and in 1920, she purchased a brownstone in New York that would become a center for her group of literary and theater friends. She lived there until her death in 1965 at the age of 84. In 1941, Kerr published an essay in which she writes evocatively about the beauty and mystery of the Eastern Shore. I think it's appropriate to hear a few of Sophie's words tonight. So this is what she says. If you have not had the luck to be born on the Eastern Shore, you cannot know its people. You may know the fruitful country of wide, level fields laced by silver tidewater rivers and creeks. You may know the woods of pine and oak and sweet gum with their undergrowth of laurel and sassafras, and in low-lying spots, the spice-scented, exquisite little magnolia glauca. You may know the excellent main roads and the sandy-rutted shortcuts and backtracks. You may know the towns and the tree-shaded streets and comfortable front porches where soothing rocking chairs invite the guest. You may know the great mansions of the past and present, some of them with their faces lifted by Northern cash money. You may read the newspapers and do business in the banks and get your mail at the post office and go to card parties and eat the superb crab salad and chocolate cake. But nonetheless, if you are not born there, you will not truly know the people. You will like them. You will enjoy their unconscious, perfect resistance to neurotic pressure. But now and then, you will find yourself amazed and baffled and even devastated by a glimpse of what lies beneath their calm and friendly exteriors. Little bit to think about. Welcome to the Eastern Shore. So those are Sophie's words. So over 50 years ago, when Sophie Kerr left $500,000 to Washington College, she stipulated that half of the earnings each year be given to the graduating senior who shows the most literary promise. The Sophie Kerr Prize this year, a staggering $65,770, take that in, is the largest undergraduate literary prize in the world. She also specified that her money be spent on scholarships for young writers, library books, and visits by writers and scholars. As a result, over 200 well-known writers, including Gwendolyn Brooks, Allen Ginsberg, Toni Morrison, Robert Pinsky, Jane Smiley, Mark Doty, I could go on, and many others have read from their works on campus. Kerr's decision to dedicate her fortune to nurturing and encouraging young writers has made Washington College a literary haven, and it is what brings us all, readers and creative writers, scholars and students of literature, here today. And now I'd like to turn the podium over to my colleague, Dr. James Allen Hall, who is Interim Director of the Rose O'Neill Literary House. Thank you.
So I have 2 jobs tonight. The first is to ask you to please silence your cell phones. If you haven't done that already, it's a good thing to do. And my second job is to introduce our honored guest, Roy Kesey. I'm going to begin with a quote of his. He's really quotable. In some ways, we tend to treat awards as stepping stones or signposts. Psychologically, winning or placing gives you a boost, of course, sometimes a big one, but at least in my case, I found that they don't last very long, hours usually, and then some moment in life brings you right back to where you were before. Those are the words of tonight's keynote speaker, Roy Kesey, in an interview he gave after a reading at the famed KGB bar in New York City. And by where you were before, Kesey means the blank page or the empty computer screen, a cursor blinking, waiting for the words you alone can write. Because ultimately, it's the work that matters. By the end of the ceremony, one of the students sitting up here on stage will have been awarded a prize of nearly $66,000, all of which they're giving to me. And the other finalists may be feeling a mix of emotions. Happiness for their own accomplishments, perhaps relief that the anticipation is over, and no doubt a little sadness. Maybe they'll be asking themselves, what does this mean for my future as a writer? I didn't win, now what? Roy Kesey graduated from Washington College in 1991. That year, and I hope he'll forgive me for telling you this, he was not selected as the winner of the Sophie Kerr Prize. Yet, like any accomplished writer who has experienced disappointment or rejection, which is to say, all writers, Kesey was able to focus on what really counts as a writer, the reading and the writing and the daily honing of craft, all which add up to beautiful words on a page and eventually to whole books. Preparing this introduction, I was struck by the range and volume of work that our keynote speaker has produced. The short story collection, Any Deadly Thing, and All Over, All Over, a novel titled Picasso, a novella called Nothing in the World, a historical guidebook, translations of Spanish language and French authors, including the novel Savage Theories, publications in literary journals such as the Georgia Review, Subtropics, and Ninth Letter, and numerous appearances in anthologies, including Best American Short Stories and New Sudden Fiction. From 2003 to 2008, he also wrote a column for McSweeney's, which was titled Dispatches from Roy Kesey, an American guy married to a Peruvian diplomat living in China. In a column about a dust storm, he writes, through the long night, the dust cloud moved in whorls that warped and tunnels that collapsed, in great dry yellow rivers through the streetlights. In the morning, the wind was gone and the dust formed drifts in the streets. Men shoveled it into the gutters like sick snow. In places, it reached to the wheel wells of the cars that, like the storefronts and walls and trees and bushes and signs, were all of that same single color midway between yellow and gray. Isn't that beautiful? These columns are, like much of Kesey's writing, surreal, dark, often very funny meditations on the experience of existing in several cultures or languages simultaneously. Reading such polished prose, it's hard to remember that these words were produced by an artist who also understands writing to be an act of fun, sometimes a kind of con or a trick played on the reader. In an interview with Fiction Writers Review, he says of his work, there's a ton of bluffing involved. Your creating mind is bluffing your editing mind, your hands are bluffing your brain, your work ethic is bluffing the limits of your talent, your present as a writer is bluffing your past. Indeed, Kesey is a writer of wit, of serious joking and joking seriousness, of experimentation, of bold, outrageous, mad voices. Consider these sentences from his short story, At the Pizza Hut, the Girls Build Their Towers. One serving per customer is the salad bar rule, and so the girls build round walls of peach and cucumber slices, brick by brick along the edge of each bowl, and then up 10 and 12 inches high, beautiful in their way, the interlinked colors. They build the curtain wall with its battened plinth, croutons for ashlar and Thousand Island mortar, and above they build battlements, the walk floored with potato sticks, pierced pine nuts inserted for arrow loops, the crenellated parapet with diced ham merlins, corbelled out to allow for 7-Up machicolations. As you can see, Kesey is a writer of high-wire sentences that dizzy us with their risk-taking. And though he's here today to help celebrate a very sizable prize, I hope we learn from his presence that it is truly the work which matters, of taking pleasure in the play of language, of pursuing one's craft, of submitting to the editor's red pen, because the most important award of all is the integrity that a writer shows by putting words on a page. agonizing over their order, taking a comma out, putting it back in. Roy Kesey teaches us that we earn the honor and privilege of calling ourselves writers, not when we win a prize or are awarded publication, but the next day when we show up to the page, fearlessly committed to beauty as ever. Please help me welcome Roy Kesey.
I hope you all are clapping for that introduction. That was amazing. Thank you, James. I also want to thank the English department for the invitation and President Baer and Dean Chamley-Wright for the opportunity. Thanks finally to all of you who've joined us tonight for one of the more unique undergraduate ceremonies anywhere in the United States. The Sophie Kerr Prize is a remarkable thing, frankly miraculous thing, given the general trend in this country of treating higher education like just another professional service to be packaged and sold. I am exceedingly proud of my association with Washington College, partly because of its role down in the trenches, mud on its face, blood in its hair, fighting that trend to the death. Now, if Sophie Kerr were alive today, she would be 136 years old and probably kind of cranky. As a popular writer in tune with her time, she would already be bored with Facebook, but she would certainly make professional, if not personal, use of Tinder and OkCupid and Hinge and Happen and Bumble. She would probably think coffee meets bagel a bit twee. I like to think that the two of us would get along well. More to the point, thanks to the extraordinary prize that she endowed, tonight a 21 or 22-year-old kid who produced a couple of good pieces will be going home with the equivalent of 6 Pulitzer Prizes. That is to say, enough money to buy a boat. A nice boat. That is to say, enough money to buy 1,100 bottles of Jim Beam and 570 cartons of Lucky Strikes. That's not a recommendation, I'm just here to help with the math. Or, hey, they could go to grad school or something. The rest of us can only hope the winner makes the right decision, whatever that might be. Now, my speech tonight is actually a series of sub-speeches. The first one, and I didn't even need to say that yet because it's to all of you, is just to say that while I was on the Washington College English faculty for one semester last year, I didn't have any part in the Sophie Kerr Prize deliberations, so much like almost all of you, I have no idea who the winner is. I, too, will be finding out when the envelope is opened. If the envelope gets opened. There's nothing harder than opening an envelope in front of a bunch of people, and I'm the one who's supposed to be opening it, so we'll just see how that goes. The bigger point is that 3 out of the 5 finalists were students in my class last year, which means that I have a 60% chance of taking all the credit. That wouldn't be fair. I'm still going to do it. It's just not going to be fair. My second, somewhat longer sub-speech is directed to the 4 students here on the dais tonight who do not end up winning the Sophie Kerr Prize. As Dr. Hall noted in his introduction back in 1991, I, too, did not win the Sophie Kerr Prize. Rumor had it that I came in second. Guess how much money you get when you come in second? The winner that year, Rob Thompson, was a close friend and a housemate of mine, and to make matters even worse, his portfolio was, objectively speaking, stronger and better than mine. So as a fellow didn't-win person, to the 4 of you, I say, congratulations. You walk out of here with 2 things tonight. First, the knowledge that your work was good enough to land you on the short list. That's not nothing. It's not $65,000. It's not nothing. The second thing you get is a huge chip that you get to wear on your shoulder for the rest of your life. Believe me when I say that every bit of writing success you ever have will be a little sweeter for not having one. On a related note, as was suggested earlier, I do find myself in a position to shed a little light on tonight's main question for you four, which is, can someone who does not win the Sophie Kerr still go on to lead a rich, full, writerly life? And I stand before you tonight as living proof that the answer is maybe. Why maybe? Because a rich, full, writerly life is an incredibly difficult thing for anyone to sustain. I love the words of Harlan Ellison on this topic. That's a name some of you might know. He writes mainly science fiction, has published something like 2,000 stories and screenplays and essays, won a boatload of awards. He wrote for the Star Trek series. He worked on the iRobot movie. Just an incredibly prolific and successful career. More to the point, his amazing short story, The Man Who Rowed Christopher Columbus Ashore, was selected by Louise Erdrich for inclusion in the 1993 edition of Best American Short Stories. And there's this nice thing that happens when you get a story picked for that anthology. You get to write an author's note where you can say anything you want, and they have to publish it. That's just the rule. Ellison's author's note that year was 1,200 words long. It was longer than some of the stories. My favorite bit is this one. Quote, "The secret is this: anyone can become a writer. If you look at the work of many of the creatures appearing on the bestseller lists, you know that things that flourish in petri dishes can become writers. The secret, is to stay a writer, to produce a body of work that you hope improves and changes with time and the accumulation of skill. What do you need to stay a writer? You need all of the things that I hope life and Washington College have fomented in you. You need diligence. You need a work ethic that borders on the fanatical, an obsession with craft, fearlessness, resilience, and love. Those are the things you need. Those are the elements that will see you through to a rich, full, writerly life, and they are what I wish for you in perpetuity. Of course, even they are no guarantee of writerly recognition. The day that Harlan Ellison got the news that his story had been selected, he also learned that one of his writer friends had just died after a long stay in a VA hospital. He describes this friend as, quote, penniless, unknown to a nation of readers, though he was working right up to the end. 70 years old and cranky as a screw being turned against its threads. A man who wrote like a wonky, puckish, amusing Henry James, sans the stick up his butt. I actually kind of like Henry James's work, but point taken. This friend was the author of 25 books, all of them out of print by the time he died. Sophie Kerr wrote 23 novels, all of them, to the best of my knowledge, out of print. Which means, as Ellison says, posterity is a snare, memory is short, and life is an absolutely unriggable crapshoot. That's enough from Harlan. My third subspeech goes out to all 5 of you vying for the prize tonight. The good news is that you are all writers. You were before, but you are now too. That's what you get to call yourselves, and that's how you get to think of yourselves. That's the good news. The bad news is that now you have to do what writers do. Bill Rohrbach once compared it to ping pong. You write the best thing you can, and you pop it out to a magazine, or 3 or 5. And in return, what you usually get is a tiny little form rejection slip, sometimes with a few words of inscrutable, maybe praise, maybe insult, sometimes with a few sentences of genuinely kind words for your work. Now, when you get those rejections, don't try to read the tea leaves, all right? Don't try to figure out why this particular reader rejected this particular piece on this particular day, even if they professed to like or love it. Because all any rejection means is, on this day, we didn't like it quite enough. That's it. There's nothing else to know. So you do another draft, and you pop it out to another magazine, and they pop it back, and you pop it out, and so it goes. That is the life of a writer. And if you do land a piece in a magazine that you like and respect, then you buy a round for the table, and everyone drinks to your success. And then, this is the important part, you get back to work. Another way of thinking about that is, in the words of the writer and editor Fred Liebran, writing is a game of attrition. Don't attrish. Do not quit. Keep writing. Keep sending things out in the world. Don't listen when the world tells you to stop, because sometimes it will. It will in the form of rejection letters, and it will in the form of complete silence. Don't listen. The world of finance may not need you, or the world of politics, or the world of industry, and God knows other writers don't want any more competition. But none of that matters. Frankly, not even the world of readers needs you, not as a whole, but there is a subset of readers who needs your very best work. Maybe that subset will be huge but short-lived, like Sophie Kerr's, or maybe small but persistent, like that of Nathaniel West, or maybe all but inextant until after your death, like Thoreau or Kafka or Dickinson. And those readers need your work, every word of it, because your characters will help them to feel less alone, and because within your words, your readers will find the language they need to think their own essential, life-saving thoughts about love and longing and fear. That's why you are needed. I don't know of any higher calling. Finally, a sub-speech directed to our winner tonight, whomever that might be. This sub-speech is 10 words long. Well done. No pressure. Tonight, the drinks are on you. Thank you very much. I was not supposed to sit down. Sorry. The type is really small on this thing. I am only to introduce the finalists. First up, we have Nicholas Anstett.
So my portfolio dealt a lot with secrets and how they manifest in identity and sexuality. So what I'm going to be reading today is a section from a short story about a man coming out to his girlfriend about an addiction that he has. I masturbated at work yesterday, Brian said. Daphne looked at the road. She turned down a side street. There was an accident ahead of them. A car had crashed into another at the intersection. There was a small fire. Men and women in uniforms milled about with fire hoses. An elderly woman cried into the shoulder of an officer. A man in a tank top watched from his porch. That's nice, Daphne said. Actually, it was 4 times yesterday, Brian said. He rubbed his hands against his pant legs. Oh, Daphne said. An officer motioned for her to stop her car. She did. The fire burned despite it all. I have an addiction, Brian said. To alcohol? Daphne asked. Scattered beer cans, half-emptied bottle of rum hung over Sundays. No. To masturbation, pleasuring myself, jacking off. Oh, Daphne said, I'm sorry. Brian felt very small. The old leather car seat was slowly pulling him inwards and devouring him. Daphne, who normally had only a few inches on him, now towered above like some sort of Godzilla creature, and Brian was just part of a crowd of smiling underpaid extras. It's fine, Brian said. He wasn't really sure if it was. Why didn't you tell me? Daphne asked. I don't know. I didn't know what would happen, and I was scared, Brian said. Why? Daphne asked. The last time the two had made love, it had been random and quiet. Their hands fumbled beneath the sheets and groped for things that weren't there. The motion felt almost coarse. He tried to look her in the eyes, but they were closed. Because, Brian said. You're not letting me in, Daphne said. I'm trying, Brian said. The leather seat extended and closed its outstretched arms around him. Have you tried getting help, Daphne asked. Yes, Brian said. What happened? Brian shrugged, but the chair fought back. The officer motioned for Daphne to pass by the wreckage. He waved his hands like he was coaxing a duckling back to a pond. They slipped past the car, now smoldering, and the woman now sobbing. What do you think about when you know, do it? Daphne asked. Brian looked out the window but could only see his own face in the reflection. I think about standing alone in a room by myself. There's no furniture or wallpaper, just solid, faded white concrete floors on all sides. There's a chalkboard and there's this image on it that keeps changing. I can never quite tell what it is. I'm standing there naked with my bare feet playing with the chipped concrete, and I feel like I'm everyone and no one. What? Daphne asked. Just doing it, I guess, Brian said. Thanks.
Next up, we have Rachel Brown.
Thank you all for being here tonight. I'm going to read the end of a story called Subsidence about two 20-something oral historians who are interviewing an old woman who lives on an island that's disappearing into the Chesapeake Bay. The three of them make their way down through the grass. "Give us a hand," the boy murmurs, and the girl puts her arm under Edie's. The three of them continue together down to the sand. "My house used to be there," says Edie, pointing to a spot 100 yards into the water. "It still is," says the boy. "It's right there. Everything's right there, just under the water. Can you see it?" "I can see it," Edie says. "I can see it," and she starts to weep. "What are you doing?" the girl whispers to the boy, but he shakes his head. "Just look," he says. He lifts the quilt from Edie's shoulders, spreads it on the sand. "Come here," he says, and helps her sit down, putting an arm around her quivering shoulders. The girl kneels on Edie's other side, lets fall a helpless hand on Edie's wrist. "What if I die?" weeps Edie. "Oh Lord, what if I die? What'll happen to them?" "You can't die now," the boy says. He pulls the recorder out of his pocket, lays it gently into her hands. Her grip creaks the plastic casing. He guides her thumb to the play button. "Listen," he says as the recording starts. "Listen, nothing's going to happen to them. You hear that? You saved them. None of you can die." Edie's voice plays out of the recorder, spreads like a net over the three of them sitting on the quilt on the sand. It casts out over the water. They can see it, all of its knots and ties. The house Edie brought her babies home to. Robbie, young, dark-haired, playing with the dog. The house, green-shaded in spring, windows wreathed in winter. And her church, the schoolhouse, the post office, everybody's houses, and all the wharves, everything rotted soft. And the bay keeps rising. The beach is all caving, submerging, some old backhoe sticking up out of the water like somebody's hand, like it could haul the land itself back up out of the bay, century by century, slump it back together, sand, then marsh, then earth, salt grass rippling down over the beach, the herons and the running creeks, the whistling swans and the geese that come down crying from the pole, settling in the reeds in the dusk, oysters building themselves up quiet and tender on the bay floor, and the crabs tide dancing, the boats and netting lines slipped asleep all through the bay, the dove-gray light, the crickets, the night frogs, Edie and Tate and Bo standing in the shoal, young, forgiven, the three of them covered in the wet air, the lines of gold underneath the leaves of the loblollies and the live oaks down the beach, and the dog wading back to them through the smooth green cove, and the stick that trailed from his mouth, drawing wrinkles on the rose underbelly of the sky, lying down on top of the water, like the good Lord's own hand, like all the veins in it, like everything could stretch on forever. Thank you very much.
Next to read is Reilly Cox.
was enjoying the reading so much I almost forgot I was next. So thank you. I will be reading excerpts from a poem entitled The Floating Man, based off of an art series my father completed in 1987. 1. The floating man has suchness, which is to say that I do not know how to write this. I've spent 20 years unpacking 20 years in order to arrive here, with one cracking journal and the box containing your last versions of you. You have suchness, so long as I keep you flat. If I turn you on your side, you become an eye slit, whittle bone thin. Father, you're giving the light paper cuts. 3. The floating man drowns happily in love off the coast of Italy. Obeying quarantine law, we burn him on the beach, prohibit our sister from attending. As a consolation, we try to grab for our sister our father's smoldering heart, miss. Instead, present to her his liver wrapped in yesterday's newspaper. Some of the ink comes off with the seawater, and we take to reading our father's liver when we miss him the most, during ocean swells or when we smell onions cooking. One afternoon, I fall asleep at the desk and I wake up with my face a mirror of stories. He, the artist of some infidel paintings, now he knows whether there is God or no. 12. The floating man outdances death. His children are called some days later to his studio to empty it. Forcing the old door, we fumble for a light switch and find our father's footsteps painted on the floor alongside the words, "Instructions to Tango." We step over them, begin filling boxes. I find one box already packed beside his desk. I open the box, find my father sleeping in it, cradle him onto the desk. Light is breaking from his chest. I can see the blue of his underpainting between the cracks in his clothing, and I want to know how to fix you, Father. Corrugated cardboard, oil pastel, tempera. Some materials are never meant to live past 30. 21. The floating man understands electricity. He has become a conduit in spring. To adjust his conductivity, he has started eating crocuses. He has started rubbing paint rags over his head in order to stimulate the colors growing there. He has written all of this in a journal, but he eats the pages to stop anyone from stealing his discovery. He knows that he is a one-man erogenous zone, and he knows that his children will be rumbles of thunder in stormy weather, and he knows that if he keeps holding this light bulb long enough, it will light. Thank you.
Next to read from her portfolio is Grace O'Connor.
Gotta hook the stool. I grew up with and took part in spoken word poetry for many years, so my poetry tends to be highly conscious of language's musicality. In my portfolio, I explore bodies experiencing trauma and joy. This is Surviving a Body in 5 parts. It is difficult to undo our own damage and to recall to our presence that which we have asked to leave. Annie Dillard. 1. From my tongue's spool, I attempt to unravel the words for it. Instead, spit him as needles, each one eyed with my reluctance to embarrass his hands to tie my body to the memory. 2. His mouth, my silence. Don't insult him again. Don't wake your same bed, friend. Again, don't bother anyone. I deserve to be body. Yeah, lie next to me, babe. Lie next to me. Hold, sweater fistful, gentle zipper. How sweet your little skin. My beg again in the after. His sweatshirt over my shoulders. Sleep in his arms. An apology, even for this. 3. How uncomfortable, trying to write a crowbar pretty with it lodged in my throat with its talons stitched to both collarbones. 4. I lie next to a woman whose body brush fires my body. Lie next to her as she tells me gas station, back room, He made me do it. She wonders at my tears, wonders at my hair aching hay against the pillowcase. She, one of two who told me the way his hands were hands, was not so bad. And I believe her, and her begin to tongue nipple ring, continue unfolding linen bodies. 5. I attempt to pluck the words from my mouth spool, decide them too much to dress my before body, instead find tongue after borrowed tongue, so each to a new body allow all to live their ugly. I tightly fasten the befores, straw women crucified in a field I light. Watch them ash into crows, calling and calling. We shadow, unravel, escape. This is my pleasure song. Shadows erode from unpleasured bodies, so this body livens its seams. Please stay, thickening clockwise, dark purple dressed, have my thoughts for breakfast. Yes, only our bodies, ourselves, sturdy want, shared supples, come closer. Overwhelming blood loam, are you feeling it? Pleasure cropping flowers, sucking skin space, hands tremble us, please. Body, that kind of welcome, that kind of curl, that kind of unfurling petal touch, bruise, gentle use. Vining cheekbone, yes. Threading nerve root, yes. Hip bone steady, maybe bone swaying open, maybe hip bone body, yes. Purple hip bone body, oh purple giving body, come hip bone, oh welcome, give open, come body, oh body, open. Oh flowering shadow, oh skin, yes, again and again, the smallest gardens held in the skin. Quickening still, slow close, two hearts rose folding, fragrant shadow grows to love this body. In our home, even the claw marks sprout. Thank you.
And our final finalist, our final reader is Alexandria Smythe.
The piece I'll be reading from is An Exploration of Myth-Making, a short story based on a real event that happened a few years ago in Chestertown. The story is told from different perspectives and examines how a story changes through multiple retellings. Okay. Frosty was wasted. That's the unofficial story. No one ever asked Walsh to be Frosty in the parade. Not once in the 10 years that he had been showing up to the event in that dingy outfit. I'm pretty sure he made it himself, but he volunteered and he had the Frosty costume, so no one said anything. He came late to the parade, of course, stumbling as he walked, and he took his place in the spot before Santa's float. He was never that social, apparently, although I'm not sure why he would want to kick a police dog. I know he wasn't fond of cops, and that's probably reason enough. Oh, an officer restrained Walsh, reined him to the ground, and after that, there was some dispute as to what happened with the costume's head. Some people say that it simply popped off during the scuffle, like the cork of a champagne bottle rolling its way into the crowd and generally terrifying the group of children on the sidewalk. Others say that Walsh himself took the foam head off and started beating the cop with it. So that's basically the version of the story that you'll hear from the people of Chestertown, even the ones who weren't there. They still like to tell the story. It's one of the most noteworthy events that happened in the town in years. It's a Christmas-time favorite. It's right up there with Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and the Polar Express. But considering how many times the story has been told, who knows if that's all really true? And it's got some plot holes, doesn't it? We don't really know why Walsh kicked the dog, and there's the business with the head. Okay, let's try again. Walsh adjusted his silken top hat, clumsily centering it on his head as he stumbled out of the pub and onto the street. The beer in his stomach warmed his icy core, and the steam of his melting innards rose to his head, melted his brain. Walsh puffed on the corncob pipe. Mind you, Walsh didn't see the police dog. No, don't mind the reports. Who's the one telling the story? As I was saying, he only heard it yelp as he felt himself tripping over something furry. He stumbled while the barking of the dog attracted the eyes of all those nearby, including the handler. "Stop," the policeman yelled, tackling the drunken snowball to the ground. Thumpity thump thump, thumpity thump thump. Walsh's head rolled off his snowy body and bounced along the street. The sidewalk was warm from the sun, and his face began to dissolve from the heat. His body went limp, severed from the top hat that gave him life. Frosty's head rotated slightly, his coal eyes seeing through the haze of his melting flesh. The policeman picked up Walsh's limp body. He pressed the two halves together so he was half holding, half dragging it to the squad car, where he shoved the mound of snow inside and slammed the door. He walked across the street and picked up his head, throwing it through the open window beside the two lumps of snow. His hat dislodged and water streaming down his face. His last vision was only of a flooded street, peopled with indistinguishable bodies that threatened to close in upon him. By the time he got back to the police station, all that was left of Walsh was a button, 2 pieces of coal, and a black top hat. But both you and I know that he'll be back again someday. Thank you.
That was terrific. Well done, all 5. Really well. So this is the moment we'll all soon be drinking to. President Bear, would you join me? Thank you. Thanks. You excited?
Yeah, very
I'm
much.
It's exciting.
I am.
It's exciting.
It
It's exciting. Sorry, if you could hold that for just a second. Thank you. The envelope, please. You've all always wanted to say that, haven't you? And the 2016 Sophie Kerr Prize and Fortune go to Reilly Cox.
And now I'm supposed to say something. All right. Thank you, President Bear and the Sophie Kerr Committee. Thank you to the other finalists. Today, I read a letter written to myself my freshman year. I'll spare you all the details, but simply put, I was very, very mistaken about how the next 4 years would go. One part, though, seemed relevant to tonight. I had been one of 3 students to receive the Sophie Kerr Gift, a scholarship for incoming students who demonstrate potential in writing. I wrote that in the letter. In regards to the Sophie Kerr Prize, the big one, I should be proud no matter what, so long as I've become a better writer during my time at Washington. And I have become a better writer because of the finalists up here. Because of my professors, especially Jean Dubrow, James Allen Hall, Roy Kesey, and Emma Sovich, because of my teachers at Winters Mill High School, because of my friends, and because of my family. The first person I had told about the Sophie Kerr Gift back in 2012 was my father. And I wish I could tell him, but the first play I ever wrote and liked was for a friend who's no longer with us, but he keeps me writing. It's very easy to forget to be kind, and forget to tell the people that you love how much they mean to you. So please, tonight, remember. Thank you.
So we've all applauded, but I want to recognize one more time all 5 of these finalists sitting here, along with the winner, but all 5 of them are Sophie Kerr winners tonight. So I'd now like to invite everybody out into the lobby to raise a glass of champagne in celebration of the finalists and all the graduating seniors at a reception sponsored by the Parents' Council. So we'll see you out there. Thank you and good night.